Okay, so let's do our lighting. Let's go maybe like here, so we have something to see while we're doing this. We can make the steps invisible, so we can see our actual backplate. Let's see it here. Now, the material for the shells. Let's find something we can start with in the content browser. And I actually found right here in broadcast, you have resources, materials, and metal. Also, you have some other, like in visualize, you have materials, and there's some metal in here, and even in prime in these presets. Yeah, prime materials. I think it's in basic, there should be something. But anyway, I found the most useful thing in broadcast in metal, and what I used is this copper. I of course will edit it a little bit later, and yeah, let's maybe use this one for the little pin in the bullet. Also, let's look at some HDRIs just while we're here. But you know what, let's skip it now, we'll look at that later. Anyway, now let's go into our metal, and what I'm gonna do here is, first off, let's turn off the specular. We don't want to ever use the specular, it's useless. Now in reflection, let's turn on our Fresnel and let's bump everything up. If the reflection is too much, we can always tone it down in post-production with or post-processing with because of our render passes. But right now, let's just keep it full on. Also, I usually want to turn off the diffuse. It just looks a bit better, and I think I get more realistic results that way. So just throw that on our shell, and let's turn off our display color. So let's turn that off. Now let's put our shell out here so we can actually work with the little pin thing. Okay, it's going to, of course we need a protection tag on our camera again. But let's exit our camera right now and let's see our shell. Where is it? And again, let's turn off the display color. Okay, so here we are, and what did I do? No, I did not want to move it. Okay, what I want to do now is select these few polygons in the center so I can put a different materials on that. So I'll go here and actually I have it selected from before. Anyway, let's go into our loop selection tool, QL, like this. So let's select this and this loop as well. And maybe we don't really need to do this. It probably won't be seen very well, but let's select the other side as well. And all we do now is just drop the material on there. That's pretty much it, okay? So we'll take this shell and replace the one before that with this. Go back into our camera. Now you can see we have this little thing in here. Okay, so let's just quickly preview this. Of course, now it looks horrible, of course. But what else can we do? Now I want to do some lighting. So of course we could use an HDR lighting or global illumination, which usually works best and gives you the best results. But that way we could not do the multipass because in Cinema 4D it won't give you the diffuse channels, and I don't even think the shadow channels, which is then it pretty much becomes useless. So we don't want that, and what we actually want is just use real lighting and maybe a little HDRI actually for the reflections, so the bullets will actually reflect something. So let's just add a sky and look into, of course, make the sky not visible by the camera as always. And let's go into our content browser and let's look at some HDRIs. I saw some here that actually look the best, I think, in visualize. Are they here? Oh yeah, these ones. These actually I think look the best. I think this one matches our scene the best. So let's use that. And it doesn't work for me sometimes. I don't know why. Maybe like this. Yeah, let's open it like that. And what I'll do is I'll take one of them, put them here. Let's just throw this away. It just imported some stuff it wants to work with. I don't want that. So let's just render this. We can actually see the reflection. Now, just to make sure our sky is lined up, let's just turn our indirect illumination and physical or global illumination is the same thing. Just for now, and also let's make the sampler progressive, which is best for just previewing your stuff. And let's just quickly render this. Also, I want to turn on these steps and turn off the display color for that, just so I can quickly check my shadows, okay? And it seems the shadows are going pretty much in the correct direction. Maybe we can rotate the sky just a little bit. Just like that. Let's see. Yeah, that actually I think looks better. And you can see that the sky gives us probably the best lighting. I mean, you can't really beat this, but then again, it's kind of pointless for multipass renders. So we'll actually use actual lighting, and let's turn this off. We'll just again use this just for the reflections. Okay, and what we'll do now is add some actual real area lights. Okay, right here in the lights, area light. Okay, so let's work on this. Our light. First off, we need our sort of sunlight. So let's make this, of course, area shadows, area light. Let's give it a slight sort of orangish tint right here. Always want the falloff to be inverse square. Let's make this a bit bigger, maybe like that. I'm just guessing right now. And I guess that's pretty much it. What we want to do now is just put it in some couple nulls, just so we have this sort of rake we can work with. And also we want to turn the light itself so it's flat against the ground for now. So what we'll do is we'll actually lift it up with one null. Like this, so it's what's happening? That should not be, oh yeah, I don't have my one. Just one band selected. What I want to do is kind of point it so it will shine down on our scene like this maybe, and with the other one, I want to rotate it maybe a little bit. Let's just see for now, just like this. And let's move the actual light back. Actually back a lot, maybe like that. Let's see, and let's see what this does. Of course, I want the light to be visible in reflection. Let's turn our stairs back on and turn our sky right for now, just so it doesn't really bias us. Yeah, I think we need more light, so let's maybe make it bigger. And that doesn't help, of course. Let's put the size back and maybe actually play with the fall off. Okay. So let's increase that. Actually, let's try increase it up a bunch. Maybe this is a little bit too strong. Yeah, this is not bad. Maybe a bit more. Let's try something in between. Yeah, I do like that. Maybe my shadows are a bit hard, and that actually what's changed by the radius. So let's just play with that maybe a little bit. Actually, it's not bad. Okay, that's actually quite nice. Maybe I want to rotate it back a little bit. Which one is it? It's this one, right? Okay, so no, I need just one band. And let's maybe pull it back like this. Let's see. Yeah, actually that's quite nice. Okay, I don't really mind that, again, the shadows are too hard because I can change that later. And what I actually forgot is add ambient occlusion, of course, always. But as I said, I don't mind that the shadows might be too hard or too dark. I can just, again, tone them down in post-processing. So I just want to give myself the range right here. And actually, yeah, I want to get it quite close to actually being good. but not, I still want to keep some space for me to play with. Anyway, now I'll create my soft light or fill light, and that is actually for, if you look outside, there's of course the hard light from the sun, and then there's all this sort of diffused, softer, colder sort of bluish light. So I'll just create that, and let's make it just a bit bluish. And what we'll do is actually, let's put it back in the center of our scene like this. Let's make it flat against the ground. Is it flat against the ground? No, it's not. It's, oh yeah, like this. So I need to turn it like this so it's flat. Okay, now it's flat. Let's actually make it quite huge, because this should be very soft diffuse light, as I said before. Let's move it all the way up, just so it's this sort of overhanging kind of, I'd say, softbox. Yeah, maybe around there. Let's try this. Okay, you can see it fills in a little bit of the other stuff right here in these shadows. Maybe you want to decrease the radius a bit. Let's see. Yeah, that was, I guess, too much. I want to put some of that back. I don't want this to be too bright and not too dark, which is always difficult, but I guess this is actually quite nice. Maybe I want the lighting condition to be a bit harsher, so let's turn this down. Actually, yeah, I think tuning it down improves the situation. It makes it a bit more contrasty and a bit more real. I think I'm actually quite happy with that. Let's just turn on our reflections. So we just have everything. And yeah, that's pretty much it, I guess. That actually looks quite well. I can now turn off my step so I can compare it with the background. Of course, I won't see my shadows now, because there's nothing to throw the shadows on, but already you can see this looks actually quite good. If you imagine the shadows being there, that will be even better. What I want to do now is actually set up my depth of field. And as I said before, we have everything in realistic sizes, so we can just input our depth of field parameters in the camera. So let's just turn on our depth of field, and I'll go into the camera and I'll say f1.8, because that is what I've been using for the recording of this. Of course, we want this to be a movie camera, and the shutter speed to be, where's the shutter speed? No, not the exposure. Movie camera, and the shutter speed to be 180 degrees, which pretty much means it's the half of the amount, or half of the time that the frame is open. So for example, for 24 frames per second, 180 degrees would be 1/48th of a second of exposure. And I show this on 1/50th because of course Canon 60D can't shoot 1/48th, but it's just a little thing. Anyway, you probably should know this if you don't read a book, okay? Anyway, okay, so we have that. What you need to do now is actually set up our focus distance. This is way too far. Let's just go to maybe like 40. Okay, let's just quickly preview that. Well, that doesn't work. I guess it might be a bit too close or too far. I'm not sure. Let's try to focus a bit further. No, not here, here. Yeah, I'm not too happy with that. Let's move it a bit back, a few centimeters. That's a bit too much, so let's maybe try like 48. Yeah, I guess that's kind of okay. Maybe 48.5. I can see that this sort of bullet is right in the middle of our depth of field, or am I wrong? Now let's actually move it back a little bit, just a tiny bit, like half a centimeter. Okay, let's try that. Okay, actually I think that's quite okay. You know what, this is gonna be weird, but I might actually want to close my aperture down a little bit. What I think this is giving us a bit too much of blur, and that might be because our camera isn't lined up perfectly, and that it's too what do I want to say? It's too close. So the focus distance is of course too small, and it's giving us very tiny depth of field. So let's maybe close it down just a little bit. And I actually think that might have helped a lot. Yeah, that's definitely better. I think we're pretty much done in here. So I guess that's the depth of field. Let's save this just to be safe. What we want to do now is of course turn on our motion blur. And let's actually go to the adaptive and find the best render setting. So let's turn off the background. Now let's just quickly render this. I am seeing a little bit of grain right here. Oh yeah, this grain, this is way too much. So let's go back here and put it on medium. Let's render that. No, not here, just in the viewer. This is pretty much, this is actually very clean. Let's look at this place when it renders. That's where we had some problems before. Yeah, there's a little bit of grain in here, but it doesn't really matter. When it's going to be moving and everything, and it's going to be animated, you're not really going to notice that, okay? And anyway, you're pretty much gonna be focusing in on the in-focus areas, of course. So let's pretty much leave that. I think we want to render a quick test render, maybe. So let's turn the background on. And let's actually give ourselves just a very small little window, maybe like 640 by 360. And also, what we forgot is of course select our frame range. So I wanted to start just before the first bullet falls down. So 20. Yeah, let's start at frame 20. You know what? Let's actually frame it right here. Frame 20. And let's just play this until we get bored or our render will be way too long. Actually, this is fun all the way, but let's play it again. Yeah, this is a good place to stop. So let's just be clean. Let's stop at 160, which gives us 140 frames. Let's give ourselves 164. So we have actually 144 frames, which I think is 7 or 6 seconds in 24 frames per second. And it's 145, but doesn't matter. It's counting the zero with the nullth. Who cares? Whatever, the first frame that doesn't have a number. So now let's see this. Let's just preview this quickly. Actually, let's put our settings back to low. And let's just quickly render a preview render so we can see this. And I'll pause the recording. And of course, I forgot one thing, which is yes, stop the rendering, and that is input our frame range in here, of course. But it is, come on, what's wrong? You know what, let's maybe put this back to 0, then it should perhaps work. Let's see, which one is the frame where we should see the bullet? 24, okay, so let's just see if this works. Just quickly wait 4 frames, or how many it should be. No, it should not be rendering from frame 0. This is wrong, this shouldn't be this way. Come on. From 20, okay? Now, let's see. 2, 3, 4. Where's our bullet? Yeah, I guess this is okay. 25. Yeah, this works, so I'll see you when this is finished. You know what, already from just a little piece of the render, I can see this actually looks quite well. So we can just stop right here and just set up our final render. And what we'll do is actually use some good resolution. So maybe 720p might be enough for now. We actually might want to use 960. So 540p, just in case the render isn't perfect. But you know what, let's risk this. Let's put it on 720. Physical medium, as I said before. And what now? We want to do everything in multipasses. So, what multipasses do we want? We want diffuse, reflection, shadow, ambient occlusion. And is that it? We want the depth for later. No. We actually don't need the depth. So let's see. Diffuse, reflection, shadow, and ambient occlusion. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Because we'll be actually doing 2 passes. The thing is, if we want the shadows, we have to render we have to render the steps for the shadows. But we cannot separate the shells with an alpha, because there will be a lot of blurring, motion blurring, depth of field, and that stuff. So we'll actually have to render these as 2 separate renders, the shell pass and the shadow pass for the background. So what we'll do actually is, first off, we'll render just the shells with the steps turned off, okay? And with the background turned off, of course. So just the shells like this. That will be our first render. The second render, we will turn on our steps, and in our shells we'll say Cinema 4D tags compositing and not seen by camera. And what that will do is it will actually give us a render of the steps with the shells being invisible, but just because we use this tag for the invisibility, then we will see our shadows on the ground, which we will then use from this multipass. So we'll use these 4 passes for the shell render, and just these 2, shadow and ambient occlusion, for the second one, when we'll just want to use the shadows on the ground, okay? So, I hope you understand that. So let's actually set up our first render for now. So let's do this. Let's go into our rendering, and let's turn on our alpha channel. I usually want to use the straight alpha, even though it doesn't really matter much. It just makes everything easier with After Effects, at least. Okay, I want to use the save, but not the regular image. I will save everything in the multipass. You know what? Let's actually add an RGBA just so we can see our overall render. But I want to do everything in the multipass just so it's saved in one folder. I would normally use an OpenEXR, but After Effects has some trouble using those unless you have some plugins. So if we're not using Nuke for our compositing, which I do recommend, but if we're not, I actually usually like to render in PNGs. You'd usually see diffs, but I usually, for just quickness and size's sake, like to use PNGs because they're smaller. And anyway, I'll usually actually use OpenEXRs because I composite in Nuke, but as long as we're compositing in After Effects right now, we'll use PNGs, okay? So again, straight alpha, we don't want to layer the name as suffix, we want to use what the pass is at the beginning of the file name. We don't really need the compositing project file. So let's just quickly go over these settings. If I forgot anything, I hope not. Okay, let's just see. That should be pretty much all of this done, I hope. If I forgot anything, I will tell you, don't worry. Anyway, right now we can just save this wherever you want. Just pick a folder, pick a name and render this. When that is done, what you will do is turn off the shells to be invisible by the camera, turn on the steps, uncheck these three, so we just have the shadows and ambient occlusion, and you pick a new folder, a new name, and render it again, okay? So we'll have to do 2 renders, and so I'll see you after the renders are finished. And actually, AE dots, it says in the rules that I can't use timescapes or anything, so you'll have to watch about 5 hours of render, enjoy that, I'll see you when it's done, okay?